In this video, we'll be meeting Leonard, who some may already know from previous videos. Leonard is a young man who likes drawing pictures. He likes finding out about the world. He likes making things. He doesn't always enjoy having his photograph taken. He's the person to go to if you want to find out about dinosaurs. And he sometimes gets into trouble. In the course of this video, we'll be looking at some of the early stages of Leonard's path from being quite a simple communicator to the accomplished storyteller that he is today. And to start with, we'll look at a fairly recent video where Leonard is talking about his summer vacation and what he enjoyed there. He's using his Echo device, which is his current communication device, using eye gaze access. And for those of you who don't speak German, we've added subtitles so that everybody can enjoy the story.
Ich habe allein geschwommen. Ich habe allein geschwommen. Und wir haben eine Flasche. Flaschen. P. O. S. T. Ins Meer. Geschossen. Und wir haben eine Flasche ins Meer geschossen.
Splash.
Leonard had his first communication assessment in around about January 2008, and at that time it was obvious that he'd need a complex communication device at some time, but the most important thing to deal with at that time was giving him more communication immediately and also starting to look at his access skills. So the first aim was to give him a low-tech communication board. Because access using his hand is not an option for Leonard, he began immediately by eye pointing. And because he could point to 6 locations using eye pointing, rather than giving him a communication board with just 6 messages on it, which would have been quite inadequate, he received a communication board with 36 messages, and in the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks, he learned a simple coding system in order to be able to use it. For instance, if he wanted to use the word stop, he'd look to the top right-hand corner. His communication partner would say, I can see where you're looking. Which color is the symbol you want? And then he'd look to the top left-hand corner to the red blob so that he could then demonstrate that he wanted the red symbol. In the course of the next few months, this was expanded. He got more vocabulary and became more efficient using it. And by June of 2008, he was ready to start experimenting with a more complex communication device. His first talker was a Vanguard 2 using a tracker access method. The device is able to follow his head movements so that he can then determine what the device does and says. He had a MinSpeak program called Quasselkiste 45 in the device, which gave him access to around 800 words. In the following short video, you can see Leonard in the early days of using this device talking to his mother, and they're discussing what he might talk about the following day in kindergarten.
Die Liste schreiben wollen, was wir alles für den Kindergarten aufschreiben verlernen. So, erzähl mal, was hast du alles am Wochenende erlebt, gemacht, was ich im Kindergartenbuch aufschreiben soll?
Polizeihubschrauber.
Du hast den Polizeihubschrauber gesehen.
It was soon fairly obvious that the Quasselkiste 45 was not going to be an adequate vocabulary for him, and so in September 2008 he moved up to Wortstrategie 84. This is an 84 location vocabulary which gave him access to an extended vocabulary and also to a full German morphology which he needs in order to be able to produce correct German sentences. At this time, it also became clear that in order to help him to learn to use language, his family and those around him would also be able to have to use the device to some extent in order to model language for him. So to help them to do that, they were provided with a target vocabulary of around 400 words. These 400 words were mostly core vocabulary and were presented on a wall chart which was positioned at strategic points around the house and kindergarten. Using this chart, those who were modeling language for Leonard could see not only where words were stored within his device, but which words it might be important for them to show him so that he could learn to communicate in a more precise fashion more quickly. As time progressed, he started producing 2- and 3-word utterances, and in order to be able to differentiate between them more clearly, he was encouraged to begin to learn to use clear display. As he began to use clear display, he could separate each utterance out one from another, so that he now began to use separate, clear, simple sentences. As time moved on, it became the sentences he was producing were still very simple, and he needed now to be concentrating more on morphology. To help him here, he needed to be able to concentrate also not just on the meanings of words, but also on the way words sound. So to help him here, he was introduced to a simple letter board, which he could also access using a color code in the same fashion as his original communication board. And if you want to learn more about his letter board, you can go to Learning with Leonard in YouTube, and there's a short video about it. To help him to learn to use and to think about the ends of words, he was encouraged to play lots of games involving rhymes. And in the extract here, you can see a part of a word list which is prepared for those who were helping him to play with rhymes. In this word list, you can see all of the words which are stored in his device, arranged not by alphabet and not by meaning, but rather by the ends of the words, so that when someone was playing a rhyme game with him, they could see also what words were available to him in order to participate in the game. So by the end of the year, there were several building blocks in place, and we could really hope that in the course of the coming months, Leonard would begin to be able to communicate in a much more timely and precise fashion. He had a functional access method, which was by no means perfect, but he was now able to access his communication device independently. He was using his device for communication, he was exploring the system, and his vocabulary was growing from day to day. His family were modeling language not only vocally, but also on the device. This means that Leonard was able to see not only what he might say, but also to get a very clear picture of how he personally may go about actually saying it. Because he was using clear display, he was separating his ideas out into individual sentences, which made them much easier to understand. And he was now actively listening to words and exploring word endings, so that we could hope that in the coming weeks and months, he'd become much more able to use morphology to express himself clearly. In a further video, we'll look at what happened in the months after, but now to wrap up, we'll give Leonard the last word, talking about his communication device and what it means for him.
Hallo, ich bin Lennart. Ich finde den Talker total gut, weil ich nicht sprechen kann. Aber mit ihm kann ich sagen, was ich möchte. Ich habe Freunde in der Schule, mit denen ich quatsche. Ihr müsst Geduld haben bei Talker-Kindern.
If you need more information, then send an email, and we'd like to thank Leonard and his mother Britta for all their help in preparing this video.